The courtroom was suffocating, not from the heat, but from the stillness. You could hear everything: the faint squeak of leather shoes, the flick of a judge's pen, the ticking of an old wall clock measuring out the seconds of someone's life. And right there in the center of it all sat Isaiah Bennett, 17 years old, wrists cuffed together, wearing a loose orange jumpsuit that made him look even smaller than he was. His eyes were fixed on the floor, shoulders squared but heavy, as if bracing for the weight of something about to crush him. Next to him sat a public defender who barely looked up from the thin folder in his hands. His suit was creased, his tie slightly askew, and his eyes tired not from lack of sleep, but from years of watching cases like this go through the motions. Cases that ended before they really began. Behind Isaiah, in the gallery's hard wooden benches, sat his mother, Gloria Bennett. Her hands were clasped so tightly in her lap, her knuckles had turned white. Her eyes, rimmed with dark circles from sleepless nights and endless worry, never left her son's back. Every breath she took sounded like it hurt. At the bench, Judge Alton Whitaker flipped through documents like they were receipts, not the culmination of a young man's life. His robe looked more like armor than authority. His expression was unreadable, indifferent. There was no jury, no media, just the players of a slow tragedy wrapped in silence. In the case of the state of Louisiana versus Isaiah Bennett, Whitaker said without lifting his eyes, "This court finds the defendant guilty on all charges." The room didn't move. The words, though spoken in a calm, practiced voice, dropped like bricks into deep water. Gloria gasped. It was the kind of sound that only comes from the chest of a mother watching her child disappear. "No," she whispered. "Please, Your Honor." He didn't. Her knees gave out as she stood, and she collapsed to the marble floor. The bailiff didn't move to help. No one did. Isaiah remained still, head bowed, hands still clutched around a folded piece of paper. It was a sketch charcoal on worn notebook paper, a drawing of his mother sitting in their living room, reading a tattered paperback beneath the glow of their only lamp. He had drawn it the night before he was arrested. It was the last good moment he remembered. Judge Whitaker continued. "Sentencing is life in prison. No possibility of parole." The bailiff stepped forward. "Let's go." Isaiah stood. He didn't protest. He didn't cry. He shuffled toward the side door, the chains around his ankles scraping against the floor. Halfway there, he looked back just once. His mother reached out for him, her mouth open, but the words wouldn't come. And then the door closed. Just like that, he was gone. But that's not where this story ends. That's where it begins. Before the courtroom, before the chains, before the headlines. Isaiah Bennett was just a 17-year-old boy with a sketchbook full of stories. He lived with his mother in a small apartment above a barber shop on Chapel Street, in the heart of Baton Rouge. One bedroom, a couch with springs that squeaked if you even looked at it, and a kitchen that always smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and fried catfish on Fridays. His mother, Gloria, worked double shifts: nursing assistant during the day, janitor at a community college by night. Her hands were always tired, her feet always sore, but her love for Isaiah never wavered. Isaiah didn't have muckno new sneakers, no smartphone, no Wi-Fi. But he had pencils, paper, and an eye that noticed the things most people missed. The curve of sunlight along a cracked window pane. The way Ms. Fields from 3B carried her groceries like they weighed more than they did. The hesitation in the eyes of strangers when they passed him on the street. All of it found its way into his drawings. While other kids played video games or scrolled endlessly, Isaiah sat by the window, sketching. His world was lines and shading, light and dark, truth and graphite. At school, he kept his head down. He wasn't a troublemaker, but he also wasn't the kind of kid teachers noticed. Not until Mrs. Esme Taylor, his English teacher, spotted a sketch he'd made of the classroom during a poetry reading. She pulled him aside after class. "You see the world, Isaiah," she said, "and you know how to show it to others. Don't let that go." He didn't, not even when the city made it hard to breathe. Most afternoons, after school, Isaiah walked 7 blocks to the downtown library. Not because it had air conditioning, though that helped, but because it had a scanner, an old, slow, cantankerous machine in the back corner near the microfilm archives. He used it to digitize his best work and saved it to a USB drive that his mom had given him 2 birthdays ago, wrapped in the comic section of a newspaper. The librarian, Mrs. Maddox, a woman with silver dreadlocks and a cardigan for every day of the week, knew him by name. "You again, Mr. Bennett," she'd say. "One day I'm going to see your art on a gallery wall and tell people I knew him when." Isaiah always blushed and smiled shyly, tucking his sketchbook under his arm and getting to work. He was preparing for something bigger. The Southern Creative Scholarship full ride, national recognition, a way out. Thousands applied, but Mrs. Taylor had helped him fill out the forms, and Isaiah had carefully curated a portfolio that told the story of his neighborhood, his mother, and the city that both raised and tried to bury him. Everything was almost ready. Then came the strawberries. It was a Wednesday. Isaiah had just left the library, having scanned 2 new drawings, one of the church on Maple Avenue, its steeple half caved in, and another of his mother, asleep in her armchair, mouth slightly open, a paperback resting on her chest. The drawings were delicate, intimate, full of love. He stopped at Morrison's Market on the corner, bought a small container of strawberries. His mother's favorite. "Scholarship still on track, Mr.?" Morrison asked as he bagged the fruit. Isaiah nodded. "Almost done." "Good," Morrison said. "You get out of here. Make us proud." Isaiah smiled, stepped outside, sketchbook tucked under one arm, plastic bag in his hand. Then the world changed. No warning, no sirens, just screeching tires, slamming doors, and 2 Baton Rouge PD cruisers surrounding him like he was prey. "Hand where we can see him." Down on the ground. Isaiah froze. He didn't understand, didn't know what was happening, but his mother's voice echoed in his memory. "If they ever stop you, baby, stay still. Stay alive." He dropped the bag. Strawberries burst open across the sidewalk. His sketchbook hit the ground, pages flying like startled birds. He raised his hands. Then came a shove. The cuffing. The knee in his back. "You match the description," an officer barked. "What description?" Isaiah whispered. "Male. Black. Hoodie." That was all it took. He was shoved into the back of the cruiser without explanation, without Miranda rights, without a single soul listening to the truth. He watched through the window as a gust of wind flipped his sketchbook's pages until one boot stepped on the cover, grinding it into the concrete. The last thing he saw before the car pulled away was his mother's drawing, torn and smeared, disappearing beneath a tire.